Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today, the 1st of August, so it's a new month, and with it we have lots of new news. So the first thing is the in-game store. Now this is just really a sort of a front thingy on the front of the show. I do have a full video on this which I recommend you check out, but in short, the store was finally added. It's only available on the PTR, the Korean PTR realm. You can buy an XP boost for a test currency, and that's pretty much it. If you want to see more, if you want to see the boost in action, check out my video on the channel. Now the next thing is blue posts, and this is a cool one. So it's about epic items, and Blizzard talked about how back in the day, even having a single epic was quite amazing. This was because raids were harder to get into / organize, only a minority of people actually raided. People were less skilled than they are now, which is probably true when you think of all the different tools that we have to use. There was less content updates, and apart from MC, the chances of getting loot were actually pretty small. You know, there's lots of BOEs and stuff that played into it, so yeah, it was kind of hard to get loot. Now they admit that purple doesn't mean what it used to mean. That's quite expendable nowadays, whereas it used to be really special back then. And that now it's really only worth something at the start of the expansion, when, you know, everybody's in greens and blues. But that's just a tiny period of time, and it doesn't really matter much, because people know how easily they're going to be able to get epics eventually. So there's one bit of a problem, right? Now, yeah. So, moving on, they said that making LFR blue wouldn't really help because there's other sources of gear, and that we will never see the level of rarity that we had back in vanilla due to there being more skilled players and frequent updates, putting more epics into the game. And, you know, I agree with them for the most part. I think the old way was special back then, and I don't think it would work now, but I do think that they should make some steps to make epics feel a little bit more epic. And actually, I think that making LFR gear blue would be okay. Because, you know, if you think of it, if LFR gear is blue, then for the LFR players, when they, you know, get enough Valor points to get an epic or something like that, that will feel epic to them. It will be better than what they have. So I actually think, have more blue gear around the place, have sources of epic gear for everybody that everybody can get that take work. Not ridiculous amounts of work, because this still needs to be a game that people can play and make meaningful progression if they only have half an hour a night, or something like that. Because that's important to keeping the game alive and keeping it healthy and keeping a player base that's, well, playing the game. So, yeah, there's lots of different ways to approach this, and it's an interesting issue. You know, at the minute, I think that it's sort of sad that we've lost the epicness of rares, but we're getting great raid content, and really as a raider, that's what comes first to me. It's the progression that I enjoy. It's the sense of, you know, being accomplished and feeling, this is great, I just killed a really hard boss. And also, when you think about it, bosses back in the day, not very complex, not massively hard. So maybe the main source of enjoyment you got was this new piece of shiny epic gear that you had a chance of getting. Whereas today, they could probably lean more on the fact that I just killed a really hard boss and performed really well, that's awesome. So yeah, I think there's differences between the two time periods. And the next thing is Twitter, and there's a lot of talk about lore from Ghostcrawler, which is interesting because he's a gameplay designer, but I thought it was a really good read, and I'll do what I can to summarize it all into one few minute sort of package. So the situation that ends up between Orgrimmar being in the hands of the Horde is the result of an important Jaina and Varian moment. So what we essentially know from this is she will say something very compelling. He'll be like, fine, I'll give the city to the Horde. Because, you know, that's kind of like what happens when Jaina has a moment with anybody. She sort of, something really awesome is going to happen, or, you know, awesome for that faction, then Jaina comes in and says, hang on now, careful, this would be too interesting, let's stop this lore moment. So yeah, I mean, it's a gameplay, you know, from a gameplay thing, you can't have the Horde losing Orgrimmar, so I think it's pretty obvious. Now, next they said is that the way Taranzu treats her factions is that, you know, the way he treats his factions is because his only goal is to protect Pandaria, so he can be a little bit xenophobic, to say the least. I think he really understands the Horde, but the Alliance piss him off quite a bit because I suppose they're close to being kind of Pandaren style in the way that their leadership and stuff. But yet they still bring all the Sha and the problems and stuff because they're angry little fucks. So yeah, there's the Alliance. Next up, Ghostcrawler claimed that we didn't have much of a reason for killing Rag or Illidan. And other than OMG, these are the bad guys. So the motivation for Pandaria was stronger. Now, I think that Illidan was more interesting because through the previous lore and stuff, he was a more fleshed out character. And he already had quite a lot of backstory. And you spent time, in that even just within the expansion, you heard about Illidan quite a lot. You saw the Burning Legion, who, okay, Illidan wasn't affiliated with them, but they're all part of the same story. You saw the different places where the other Draenei were. you saw their giant structures, and really, you didn't see this for the Thunder King until you got to the Isle of Thunder. You didn't really see this for the Mantid until you got to that one special Mantid zone. So no, I actually would refute what Ghostcrawler says and say that he's actually really wrong. So yeah, another thing I just think with WoLore in general is they need to start making it one big storyline, because the problem is every expansion has its own contained story. Now, like, all the mop stuff was introduced inside the expansion, and I didn't really have a lot of time to catch players' hearts and minds, or resonate with them or anything like that. I couldn't give a toss about Lei Shen, or anything like that, other than the fact that he was a really fun, well-designed boss. Now, I think the Lich King was done perfectly, because, and this is interesting, I had not played Warcraft 3, at the time of Wrath. I actually played it after, so I didn't really go in with the benefit of already knowing this character. But through, I had heard of the Lich King while I was leveling my character and that sort of thing, and I knew he was a guy. And very early on, we met him in person, and a lot of people sort of thought that was a bit of a mustache-twirling villain moment, but I actually think it really worked from a story perspective, because you got to know that character, and the entire way through that expansion, in every zone, you see the Scourge, you see what they've wrought in the world, you see Arthas' plans being put into motion. The whole expansion is leading up to that one boss. The different raids in that expansion. Okay, Ulduar, not so much, but it's sort of related. But Naxxramas, ICC, TOC, they were, well, more like Naxxramas and TOC, they were all leading up to Arthas. They were all had that sort of as the end goal, and I think that was really important to making the end of that expansion feel special. Now, unfortunately, I think they borked up the end of that expansion by giving us nearly like a year between that and Cataclysm. But if it had just been 6 months, I think it would have been a fantastic end to the expansion. And actually, as weird as this may sound, I think that it would have stifled the sort of decline in players that we had during the Cata launch. So yeah, there you go. That's what I think about the story. Now, there was some other blue talk. They confirmed that Yasharj is dead and is not going to pop up and try to kill us. That they're glad players are sad about Nazgrim because it means, he was well written. The Alliance don't need story to compensate for 5.4 because they just captured the enemy capital city, and there's no way of compensating them for such a major victory. I know the Horde will get Orgrimmar back, but you've got to assume that in the next expansion story, the Alliance will be on the upper hand after all the shit that's went down with the Horde. So finally, there was some talk about the future. Now, their thoughts for challenge modes in 6.0 is they're going to keep the old ones relevant and add some more, so that's always good. They don't think avoidance gear will be the same in the next expansion, and Sunsong Ranch is a Mists of Pandaria feature that will not really be that relevant in the next expansion. And that's okay, because if they are carrying every single different feature like this into the next expansion, the amount of feature creep will just make the end of the game a very undirected clusterfuck, which I actually don't think would be good. You need lots of things to do, but if there's just a ridiculous amount and it's hard to bounce between them all, then it just presents more gameplay problems for everyone involved. And with that, it is the end of the show. Now, things to do. Firstly, check out my live stream. I know I'm pushing this a lot, but it's actually been it's been pretty damn successful. I had 25 people on yesterday. So, twitch.tv/Bellular, go to that, it's good. And other than that, like the video and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.